We believe in creating economic impact from where our LPs come from and where our money comes from in the fund.
What inspired you to work in the Middle East?
So we're not putting all our eggs in the same basket. We're kind of diversifying and we're hedging our bets. And I think we're one of the very few funds who's actively looking into Middle East. A lot of funds have come to the Middle East or APAC and MENA to try and raise money from those regions. But when it comes back to investing, not a lot of funds want to invest in that region, right?
How are your portfolio companies trying to solve the industry's problems?
So Washington, D.C., being the nation's capital, has been number one in country per capita in fatality reductions because they're using Citian right now. So Citian is solving a real problem and not just a good-to-have solution. And these are the kind of solutions we really like to back.
How challenging the construction industry is and how slow the technology adoption tends to be. What are the main market barriers that you'd say your portfolio companies, you as a fund potentially face when dealing with the construction industry?
They predict that by 2030, there's going to be $2 trillion of losses per year due to inefficiencies or unproductivity.
Today, we're going to feature a leading investor in the construction tech space, Nikhil Choudhary. Nikhil is a partner in Nirman Ventures, a VC fully focused on construction technology. In this podcast, we're going to discuss why Nikhil decided to enter such a challenging investment space, as well as their investment strategy and the impact they aim to have on the industry. Tune in and subscribe. Don't miss out on this. And we're very much looking forward to sharing with you this amazing episode. Nikhil, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Eliyahu. It's a pleasure to be speaking with you today.
Great. So we always want to start with the why. You are a venture capital fund in construction technology. We all know the construction tech space is very challenging. Why did you guys decide to enter this space?
So we believe if fast tech enablement were to happen in our industry, it must be driven by industry insiders. Why we entered the space is because we are part of those industry insiders. Beyond investing, we understand construction, its challenges, and how to run companies. A majority of the partnership team at Nirman has worked in, founded, or led construction companies before in their prior careers. Collectively, our partners have over 100 years of experience in various construction trades. The cherry on the top is majority of our LP network it also comes from the construction industry. So that kind of is an easy why for us. We don't know anything better than construction, so construction it is for us.
Wow, so that's super interesting. And kind of what inspired you to go after technology for this space? Being from the industry, what inspired you to look at technology? What kind of impact are you guys hoping to have on the industry?
So, if you look at construction, there's so much of technology gap right now in the industry. They predict that by 2030, there's going to be $2 trillion of losses per year due to inefficiencies or unproductivity. And that's kind of, where the tech solutions could come and help in this industry. It's kind of, one of the core industries like agriculture or mining, which is kind of lagging behind. And a venture fund is just a catalyst to kind of help move the technology or the tech advances faster, right? In terms of impact, we are a geography agnostic fund and we back diverse teams, especially the ones with at least one founder who has been an operator in construction previously. Of course, returns are our first priority in private equity. But we also like to measure our socio-economic impact, number of employment that our portcos generate being one of them. That's kind of how we like to measure the impact that our fund is going to have.
Okay, super interesting. So we're kind of stepping into it already, but what is the strategy, the investment strategy of the fund? What kind of companies do you want to attract? And what stage do you guys typically invest in?
Got it. So we're investing out of our early stage fund currently. So our sweet spot is pre-seed, seed, and bridge. Thankfully, due to our very strategically placed partnership, we have partners in London, Abu Dhabi, Dubai, Sydney, Australia, New York, and me being in Silicon Valley. So we cover the basis of innovation and where construction is going to happen. So we attract a lot of startups organically. So luckily, we have a very robust deal flow. Majority of the startups, I could say that 75% of construction tech startups in the world do come through our desk. So we're blessed in that sense. Some of the solutions we are currently evaluating are and are interested in this quarter are robotics, AI, of course, everything's it's the next industrial revolution. Things are not going to be the same 10 years from now because of machine learning and AI. Upskilling of workforce, pollution, energy, and these are kind of things that we are evaluating in this quarter. So we keep changing we have a matrix that we prepare as a partnership team every quarter. We see what's the demand and supply currently in the market, and we refine our investment strategy for that quarter.
Okay, super interesting. So you also mentioned the Middle East as countries that you guys are, or regions you guys are looking at. And I think that makes you also very unique as a fund. So just out of curiosity, what inspired you to work in the Middle East? What inspired that?
Yeah, it's unique, right? Because we that's a great question, by the way, and it's a lot of funds have come to the Middle East or APAC and MENA to try and raise money from those regions. But when it comes back to investing, not a lot of funds want to invest in that region, right? And our thesis is slightly different because we believe in creating economic impact from where our LPs come from and where our money comes from in the fund. The second thing to that is if you look at where construction is going to happen in the next 10 to 20 years, it is APAC and Middle East. That's kind of MENA and APAC region, which is the developing region where things are still being built on a grand scale versus the West where we have infrastructure, but the infrastructure is aging. So there's going to be a lot of improvements that will be needed, right? So the technology that you see that's going to be needed in the West versus the technology that's going to be needed in developing economies, fast developing economies like Gulf and like APAC, they're completely different, right? So we're not putting all our eggs in the same basket. We're kind of diversifying and we're hedging our bets. And I think we're one of the very few funds who's actively looking into Middle East for investments.
Yeah, it is. It's super interesting. I really think that it also, the fact that you have a background also in construction within also the region, within also APAC and GCC region, as well as maybe the fact that you're in Silicon Valley and you're seeing what's going on, what's growing, and your insights on how the needs are different. I think it's really, really interesting. I wish I had a lot more time to poke at all these really interesting topics. But I guess we'll have to have another one.
Sure, absolutely.
So how are your portfolio companies trying to solve the industry's problems? Like the core concept is that every startup starts with a problem that they're trying to solve. So what would you say are the main problems that your portfolio companies are trying to solve?
So I can give you one example of our portfolio company. It's called Citian. Last year, US had over 43,000 fatalities on our roadways, and this number continues to rise. The main reason for this is that policymakers or agencies do not have accurate data to inform appropriate interventions. So what Citian does is it's overcoming this problem by offering real-time safety data refinement and analytics using AI. Their solution provides granular insights on route safety issues along every roadway and intersection in the transportation system. So Washington, D.C. being the nation's capital, has been number one in country per capita in fatality reductions because they're using Citian right now. So Citian is solving a real problem and not just a good to have solution. And these are the kind of solutions we really like to back, where there is a clear demand, there is a very crisp story that can sell. And since we invested, Citian has seen its revenue double up. So their ARR has gone 2x in the last quarter, and its solutions are rapidly being adopted across the nation. And I feel there's a lot of opportunity for this kind of solution because it's data driven. It's a DaaS and a SaaS company. They have a lot of opportunity to go beyond the US, but currently they have so much of demand from within the US that they're kind of not looking to go outside. But that's something that we try to help our portfolio startups as well. If there is an opportunity to advance or to capture some other markets, some other geographies through our partnership team, that is very much possible.
Super interesting. So over here, there's a safety element. If I understand correctly, right? That and for me, one of the big questions that comes into play a lot of times with these tech companies, that they have a really important mission. A lot of times in the industry, you're seeing safety being an issue, well-being. Like you have these ESG being, sustainability being a very big issue. Is it hard to? This is just really out of curiosity. How's it become quantifiable for the construction companies? Like, where's the? Do you find that the construction companies, I'd say, have a clear ROI where they're saving their money, and when it comes to adopting these products, or is this something that is more legislative, coming from the regulatory perspective?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. Actually, this is the general problem with our industry, is that unless it is a regulatory requirement, people do not want to invest in innovation, right? And I always say this: innovation is a team sport, and that is what we tell mid to large size construction companies. It's almost their duty to trial new technologies, right, for the advancement of the overall industry. They are the ones who can afford it, and they are the ones who can afford to lead the initiative, because who else will? So luckily, for our portfolio companies, our LP network is actively engaged, and it provides the first platform for them to trial new solutions. And they get feedback to achieve a first product market fit or get closer to a product market fit. So for us, it's kind of easier. But we've seen that there are very few construction companies who would actually, without a regulatory requirement, go out and really try hard to innovate. And there are a number of them right now, in the last couple of years at least. There are a number of them that have come up and they're leading this initiative. But I think we need more such companies and more such corporates to understand that if we were not to lag behind in innovation and tech adoption, someone has to lead the charge, right?
Yeah, and I love also that you kind of really define that innovation is like a team effort. There's so much there's so much potential, but you really need the team and the different disciplines also within the industry to be willing to get around ideas or get around technology products, be willing to try it out, be willing to invest. But I also find that a lot of times that we're just about to jump into like the barriers and the challenges in the market. So it's like a good segue. But maybe you could share with me really, we know how challenging the construction industry is and how slow the technology adoption tends to be. What are the main market barriers that you'd say your portfolio companies, you as a fund potentially face when dealing with with the construction industry?
So in general, construction employs 7% of the global workforce. It contributes to 25 to 40% of the world's carbon emissions. It accounts for 14% of the world's GDP. If construction works, the world works. If construction fails, everything fails, right? And it's time that we all started paying more attention to core industries like I mentioned earlier, agriculture, construction, mining, because our focus has been, in biotech has taken off. deep tech, core tech has taken off. But what about our basic necessities? These are the industries that are covering that, right? In terms of challenges, there's not just one challenge that we're looking for our portfolio companies to solve. There are so many challenges that as an industry we're facing right now, or in the next coming 10 years. There's an aging workforce. There's an inhibition for new professionals to join the industry due to low pay scale. Clearly you look at the salaries of a fresh grad civil engineer versus a fresh grad computer science person, right? It's literally double. At entry level, they walk in and a computer science is making a six-figure plus salary, versus a civil engineer is making a very low pay scale, right? 50, 60, $65,000 when they start. So why would young kids choose to go into construction or go into core industries, right? Then we have emissions. It's really a big problem, right? Like Portland cement manufacturing process, right? It contributes to one of the largest carbon emissions. There are thin margins on projects. There's wastage on construction sites due to lack of productivity. So it's just kind of, I'm naming a few, but technology can help with each of these challenges if the market is patient and if it's ready to support innovation.
Okay, so this is a lot to unpack, and this is a lot to unpack. And from the investor perspective, within the space, what would you say is also, because I think it's what is like a fund's biggest challenge within this industry? That you would think if you took this parallel to other venture funds investing in other categories, what would you say is like the biggest challenge?
I think biggest challenges, there are two challenges. One is educating the construction companies on why they need to invest more into innovation. And the second biggest challenge is also to educate or motivate founders to create companies in our industry. Because again, if we are lagging behind, then which founder is going to join? Like, I'll give you an example of a very solid founder from Middle East, specifically UAE. And I have utmost respect for the guy. I won't name him, but he was the first pioneer in construction tech innovation in your region, from Dubai. And he's been finding it really hard to raise capital because again the environment over there is kind of different, where there's not much belief in local entrepreneurs, or at least it wasn't earlier back in the day. Now things are changing with a lot of new funds coming up, but that kind of frustration, right, where a founder is really trying and does not find the right support system from venture or investors, and then they lack motivation, right? And who else is going to try and do it? So as an economy, I think every country should try very hard, or every region should try very hard to support their own entrepreneurs. I think once that happens, things are going to start working. Like, don't go out looking for the next hot Israeli company or the next hot Silicon Valley company before you have looked very hard into your own entrepreneurs in that region, right? So that's kind of where, that's kind of my message to, and those are the challenges, right, to that we feel, that finding good entrepreneurs to come join this tech revolution, and then finding corporates who believe in this tech revolution as well.
I can't agree more. I think this is like the core of the podcast started when we were seeing that we were having conversations with construction companies and funds and startups, that we just felt like there's so much barriers of information. Everyone needs to hear, each other's stories and how they're facing, how they look at the problem, how they look at the challenge, how they look at innovation, and I think this is part of it, like just like you're saying, an educating aspect of both investing, but also existing within this construction technology ecosystem. What would you say is the most significant player that if you had the opportunity to kind of inspire, who would it be? Would it be government? Would it be construction companies? Would it be the innovators? Who do you think is like the most important function today to inspire?
Construction companies for sure. Government makes regulations. You cannot expect government to invest.
Mm-hmm.
In actively investing has to come from within these organizations. And there has to be a belief. If we do not invest, and it's not as if they're just doing a favor, because the favor is coming back to them as well, because they are going to be ahead of the curve, right? If they do invest actively or support the ecosystem, whatever way, right? They could start, let's say a frequent demo day, right? Where there are entrepreneurs that can come and pitch. There could be kind of a test out program where new technologies are being trialed out frequently in those companies, right? Even that creates so much of positive sentiment, right, in the market. So that's kind of I feel that more than government authorities or government agencies, it has to be the corporates that have to lead the charge in this innovation.
Yeah, I love it. So the future of the industry, what do you think is the future of the industry is going to look like, and how can technology shape the future of industry?
So I feel the future of the industry, we're moving very fast with AI, how AI is going to change the way we've done things. Interestingly, we're kind of so backward in terms of tech adoption, right? That AI is far, far away, but a lot of companies don't even have CRM systems in place, robust CRM systems or ERP systems in place. They're still out in the market. I know a lot of companies from your region that are looking into new tools of ERP, CRM, and when you look at the scale of these companies, you would be astonished and surprised, like how have they operated without a robust CRM or ERP system until now, right? So I feel the future of the industry is like we're going to be moving very fast, very rapidly, and there are changes coming in the world. In terms of construction, if the industry does not adapt to those changes, it's going to lag behind. I think we're facing severe workforce shortages. It's how many people are sending their kids to trade schools. Where are the next carpenters coming from? Where are the next welders going to come from? And these are challenges that robotics can solve up to an extent, but I feel that that's a far-fetched idea. Yes, it is going to be possible in the next 10 years, but what about near term? Near term, we have to upskill our workforce. We have to provide them the guidance. We have to provide them the education. So is there technology that is doing that, right? We've seen a few technologies that are trying to upskill the labor. There's a lot of agriculture, for example, in India. There's a lot of turnover from agriculture, where agriculture is getting more commercialized. So a lot of agriculture workforce is leaving agriculture industry. And there's a startup that we saw that they're upskilling that workforce and bringing them onto construction. So it has a socio-economic impact, right? Where you're also providing a value to the society rather than just purely based on investing based on MOIC or your returns, basically, right?
Yeah, super interesting. I think upskilling is such an interesting like part of the problem, because there's so much fear from the existing workforce, I think, from what the impacts are going to be. At the same time, there's so much uncertainty, I would say, with what will be the required skill sets, that new workers within the industry are going to be. And it might be, operating robots that aren't right now, in mainstream construction, or, it might be 3D printing. There might be so many different areas, and helping students. And I'm a big believer of this. I was actually talking to a few very established universities on thinking about creating programs for it. But how do you prepare an engineer student today, to at least have the understanding of what directions industries are going to? Like, you know,
Yeah.
where are we going? Like, how should they even be looking at it or thinking about what skills they need to develop? So I really
True.
identify and think that it's a really interesting challenge that you're bringing up, and um, I guess this is leading us to another area of how would you inspire both young people who want to enter the construction industry as well as founders and investors? You know, what advice would you give? What advice would you give these different people?
One, so the first advice I'd say is don't don't start a company and go looking out for VC money as your first action item. This is we see time and again, right? Build your product, get early stage, get early customer traction, get closer to a product market fit, and venture money will come running behind you. Second is fail to learn and learn to fail. So if someone has never worked in construction before, I highly recommend learning about the industry before starting out a company, because you could be the best tech person, but construction is very complex. Or at the minimum, try to get a co-founder who has the operating experience in construction. The industry is complex, but at the very same time, it's quite promising in terms of technology gap, right? Like I mentioned earlier, that there's a $2 trillion gap that the industry is going to face in inefficiencies by 2030. So that's a $2 trillion market for technology solutions that they can come and take. This is like one of the largest pie if you look at all the industries, right? Um, and it's a very lucrative space. So I think for entrepreneurs, this could be if they're trying to build something in these times, it's the most opportune time, right? That the industry has ever faced, basically.
Oh, incredible advice. What would you tell investors who are interested in entering this space?
I think,
What kind of advice would
yeah,
you give them?
same advice, right? It's such a big market, it's such a large market, and it's quite most of it is pretty archaic. So solutions that have worked previously. So you don't really have to be very, very innovative. Things that have already existed uh, uh, in other parts of the world, right? They could be brought to some other geographies. So there's so much opportunity right now in the industry. So for investors, actively, they should be looking into this space, especially the agnostic funds, because there's a lot of money to be made here. I'm trying to explain it in the terms that they understand. So there's a lot of return potential in this industry.
Okay, incredible. So, first of all, Kill, it's amazing. Like, I really think that there's like really insightful perspective, a lot, especially from a venture fund, which is very unique because at most times, most scenarios, when I'm even looking at the investors in this space, I'd say the majority of them today are CVCs or corporate venture capital, right? They're from a construction company. Their interest, the way that they look at the industry, is through needs of a specific company that has specific problems. So it kind of limits a little bit, the scope that they're willing to look at or the types of products that they're willing to invest in, because it needs to meet the different criteria of, I'd say, their different departments. So it's really refreshing to hear your perspective.
Thank you.
First of all, really thank you for sharing your insights. I'm wondering, what is the funniest pitch you encountered till now?
So in terms of funny, there's been quite a few, but I don't really judge a pitch that way. The way I look at it is, some founders are prepared, and some founders are getting there, right? It's being a founder myself previously, I have utmost respect for entrepreneurs. It's a very hard job. It's investors are because of founders, not the other way around. So if there are no founders, there's no investors. If there are no investors, founders will still be there. They'll be bootstrapped, right? Or they'll look at different sources of money. When a founder takes the time to speak with us, it is our responsibility to make them feel comfortable. As the saying goes, people will forget what you said, they will forget what you did, but they will never forget how you made them feel, right? And that's kind of our motto when we talk to entrepreneurs. we keep it very lighthearted. We try and engage, at least a partner would try and engage with an entrepreneur that has reached out to us. We're backlogged, so we're delayed a lot of time. So I'll apologize to all the founders that have been kind of waiting for our responses. But once we do like an opportunity, we kind of jump in and we're all ears. We listen to them, and even if we are not investing, we try to help them out if we can make a connection for them or to for customers or to other investors. We try our best to do that.
I love it. I couldn't agree more. The startups, the founders are the backbone of the entire ecosystem, right? That's the
Totally.
And it's amazing to hear, how your approach and your perspective and understanding and empathy that you have for founders. So yeah, total kudos. And what would you say is are people's facial expression when you tell them that you're a construction tech fund?
People from outside the industry, actually, even from within the industry, a lot of people who've been working in the industry for years, for decades, right? And they hear, oh, something like this exists. That's like their first reaction. For outsiders, construction itself is like a kind of a different path, right? When they hear, oh, you were an entrepreneur prior to the fund, I was an entrepreneur in construction, so they would assume that I'm a techie, or I'm a tech entrepreneur when they meet me. And when I say I'm in construction, so I'm really the odd one out, for better or for worse. I always like the attention because they're always intrigued. Like, what does the industry look like? What's your day like? Because these guys are used to working on their computers all day. Versus for us, we used to get the pleasure of going out to sites, exploring different markets, talking to a lot of people, right? Engaging with a lot of different people. So there's a lot of social factor to construction, which it's a fun industry. It's a good industry to be in. But almost all of them that we talk to, they want to learn more. And the same question that you started your podcast with, right? Why construction? Is the same question that we get asked when we talk to someone from outside the industry. And when we tell them about the opportunities that exist in the market, so they're like, oh, wow, that's brilliant, right? So they're always intrigued.
I agree. And what would you say is the most surprising challenge or most surprising solution that, because people can get very creative, that you think you encountered from all your pitches?
There's so many. There's like hemp being used. So weed is being used to build homes. But the most surprising challenge, or I wouldn't say challenge, but the most surprising thing has to be that fax machines are still very relevant in construction. So you would still see purchase orders being printed. They're being signed physically, and then they're being faxed, right? It's a very common sight in our industry. So that kind of tells people, how much opportunity there is, right? Just for an app like DocuSign, maybe, right? But there are different applications in the market now, but still there are lots of companies, I would say a good chunk of companies that are operating the old school way still, right? For better or worse, healthcare industry is also, one of the largest users of fax machines. But it's that's kind of, I feel, really surprising, right? Like, just to kind of tell an outsider how much advancement that we need as an industry. And when we tell them, like, this is how things are being done in most companies, they find it really, really interesting and surprising.
That's super interesting. So first of all, Nikhil, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast. Yeah, your insights are profound, and I'm sure a lot of people are going to be inspired. So I want to thank you, and thank you for taking the time, sharing your perspective and insights. And yeah, just thank you so much.
Thank you, Ali. I really appreciate it. And it was a pleasure speaking with you.